Right, get around, figure transformations, and kind of part 3 of this, I guess. I wasn't planning on it, but what I realized is I can feel my calf now really tight. So I worked on my hip, I worked on my hamstring. We got to understand that the calf muscle is kind of attached to the back of the femur here, and especially because my femur is kind of getting internally rotated a little bit too much, and I got to lengthen all the tissue on the inside hamstring. So I got to lengthen this, and I got to open this up. And again, this is kind of what happens with the body. It crisscrosses. So this gets tight, the next thing gets tight. Now, a lot of times, our body doesn't care about particular muscles. It cares more about the fascial lines. So I can feel basically a cable running right from my hamstring down into my gastroc. So what I'm going to do is kind of loosen those cables, if you will. So when we get back into that same position that I started my other one in, and I'm going to work the gastroc. Now also to promote this too, I got to work the outside, because the outside's got to lengthen with the inside too. So we kind of got 2 parts to that gastroc, and it attaches right up underneath kind of the femur, kind of on the 2 heads there, if you will. Again, this shouldn't be tender. If it is tender, you got to kind of work in different spots, so that's why I'm starting on my outside, because I know the inside is going to be really tender. These fibers are kind of pulling. Now I'm going to triangle to the inside, see what I can get. So yeah, now I can get in there. I'm going to kind of come up behind the knee a little bit. This is the hardest part when you start to get those kind of cables in the body, I realize. For years I was trying to understand it completely. And those cables, they basically travel end to end. And they're the fibers that are kind of twisting or pulling on our joints the most. And they'll run kind of all the way through the whole muscle fiber, if you will. You can especially see it, usually on the hamstrings. Hence the name hamstring. There are a bunch of kind of strings that form over time because the fascial lines kind of get so tight, and then they start pulling on each end. And you got to think of 2 muscles. They start at this kind of very kind of narrow tip. They fatten and widen, and then they come back down to a narrow tip often. Okay. Now, not so much for like kind of the pec or the deltoids, glutes. These guys kind of mass up and spread, very similar to the core. It's like a spider web, if you will. And these big muscles, they're always kind of, again, pulling. They're our main movers. These ones that are not coming to these kind of tip points, if you will, on both ends. So the ones that are kind of massed out and then come to a tip, that one's pulling me the most. So my pec, okay, my lat, my glutes, my deltoids, these big muscles, and we're not all too often getting a lot of issues with them. And I think that's one of the reasons why they kind of have become overlooked. I'm going to hit this gastroc a little bit different. Actually not. Do it this way. So I'm going to put this position, and I'm going to try and get up under there. Actually, no, I'm going to go into a bent knee. So I'm trying to kind of hamstring curl, if you will. I remember probably in my 20s, a lot of my clients were younger. We used to, maybe I was doing a bridge on TRX. And you might notice that you feel it more behind the knee. That's because the calf is doing more of the work. And I realized, certain exercises we need to kind of maybe do a little bit more of, such as like, hamstring curls, maybe with knee extensions and things like that are kind of so-called controversial, but they promote big movement patterns, I realize now, as opposed to, a squat, especially somebody maybe not getting into that full squat position. This is where you can basically use a TRX to get those movement patterns going. But if people can start to realize that we want to, with our exercise, make sure that we're stretching enough. I realized in my folly years ago when I kind of opened the business that I stopped stretching the way that I used to. And I put exercise well over anything else. For years it was fine. But once I started kind of noticing the last few years that my hip was getting worse and worse, and that if I didn't really do something to fix it, I was probably going to have some issues. Possibly even again, knee issues again, which have gone away because my hip was getting so tight. When I do this, I want to try and get on one spot and just kind of hold it and work that stretch. So I can feel it kind of releasing. All too often with the percussion guns, we're kind of trying to move around too much. And I realized again, think of the ripple effect. That's why I tend to use the kind of what is supposedly meant for the deeper tissue, the pointy end one, so that I can get that effect. I really don't mess around with too many of the other ones. I might start exploring them. I have in the past. But because I've been mostly doing this to lengthen my muscle tissue, I want kind of pinpoint accuracy to where I'm going. So this is the one that I focus on the most. So again, I did my hip first, I did my hamstring and my quad second, and now I'm going down into the calf. As much as you can do this daily, the better everything is going to be. Even if it's 5, 10 minutes a day, a little bit after you exercise, it's all about key placements and kind of understanding how the body works and how the body tightens up. And kind of like anything, if we can systematically, kind of like I've done, is come up with a way to do this, then it becomes much more productive. Just like a lot of things with kind of, maybe exercise and whatnot, it's kind of all over the place. We're not always kind of formulating a great plan to what we should be doing, and not always kind of noticing what's happening a lot of times, especially with the body, because it happens so slowly over time that we're maybe focused on a gain somewhere, but not realizing that we're maybe losing somewhere else. And it's so hard to target every part of the body all the time. And a lot of exercises we don't want to do, they're the ones that we should be doing, but maybe they're too hard. Maybe we just don't know enough. So we kind of stay away from them, a lot of times more out of fear than anything else. So now I can notice, check this. I feel like it's my hamstring now. Might even be my foot. Might even be the foot fascia that I can kind of feel. Yeah, it's actually more my foot now. I can feel the kind of arch in my foot. Oh yeah. And this is how you're going to kind of fix really any kind of foot issue that we have. My right ankle had sprained years ago, and they said it would never be right. I kind of beg to differ at this point. Now that I understand it was my hip that caused my foot problems in the first place. And you got to think, this is the end point, very similar to the hand. So depending on how I use each segment is going to dictate how this gets used. And the foot just kind of takes a beating, if you will. It's in a way meant to do that. But as the calf gets really tight, it's going to start to restrict my movement patterns through my foot. So if we ever really kind of want to truly fix any foot issues, we first kind of got to start at the hip and just kind of keep the fascia moving. I've already got better balance and control over this foot just from fixing the hip. I haven't spent too much time on the foot itself because I know I need to align my knee better in order to get my foot to move better. So all too often, I started thinking the movements we do too much, we do this, that foot comes out. Okay, a lot of times we're not getting into this internally rotated stance. And that's part of what happens with the deviation of the knee. So, we're doing this, getting in and out of cars, out of a chair, things like that. And our extensors become, oh, my top of my foot's much better. Our extensors are just getting way overused. They became like, when I started this, my calf was like a rock. I mean, it was just so tight. You know, I didn't even know if I'd be able to kind of achieve some of the things I've already achieved. Now, you know, I'm almost kind of certain I can fix this foot, get it back to the way it was. I'm going to test it out once I get it to a certain point with a brace again, because that was the only way that I kind of realized that I didn't trust the foot. But what I realize now more is I don't trust the hip. The hip is so tight that it makes my foot fall at a certain angle, which makes me not trust the ankle because I sprained it, and because the scar tissue is so tight, because I can't move it properly because my extensors in my gastroc have just become so tight, and because the angle of my knee was forcing me to take. So once we start understanding, you know, if I want to fix my foot, I got to fix my hip. You can't look at these so much as like individual segments like we've been doing, kind of foot guy, knee guy, hip guy. The hip is the most important kind of movement or area on the body, and then it kind of spreads out if you think about it. Once we start to take care of our hip and stretch it more, we're kind of, I think, thinking, you know, myself included, because, you know, we get some meat back there, that everything's fine, and then we need to keep strengthening it, but buns of steel, it's just a metaphor. It's not something you really want to strive for. Think about it. If it's just that tight, it's not really doing anything. And that's what's happening with a lot of us, is we're just so tight. And you know, I hear it all the time from everybody. I'm tight this, tight that, you know what I mean? And then that's where the pain comes in. So hopefully this was helpful. Oh, yeah, I can notice I gotta work my foot a little bit more. But now I can kind of pull that foot in a little bit better. Yeah. I can feel the tightness on my foot, but again, as long as I just keep each day kind of facilitating my movement, I know I can get back to kind of, or even probably maybe for the first time, get back to natural position. Thankfully with the percussion. If you found this helpful, thank you.